A Tale of Light and Shadows. This is a fictional historical novel and not based on real events. The fog of early dawn lifted slowly over Georgian London, its streets and alleys emerging like a secret slowly revealed. In that enigmatic hour, the city was a tapestry of soft pastel hues and cobblestone wonders, where every archway, every wrought iron balcony, and every polished marble colonnade bore silent witness to the passage of countless souls over centuries. The East End's narrow lanes gave way almost imperceptibly to the graceful, curving thoroughfares of the West, where grand houses with meticulously carved friezes and the luminous glow of gaslight in the twilight recalled the ambitions and artistry of an era determined both to preserve tradition and embrace the promise of progress. In this city, amidst the busy, determined pulse of commerce and art, there lived Edward Merrick, a man whose soul seemed as ancient as the stone in the arches of London's finest edifices yet as hopeful as the sunrise over the Thames. Edward, of slender build and warm hazel eyes reflecting a lifetime of introspection, was a modest yet passionate architect, devoted to reviving the lost beauty of classical design in a rapidly modernizing metropolis. His days were spent wandering the city, clipboard in hand, enamored by the interplay of shadow and light that danced across the molded facades of stately Georgian mansions and erected public buildings. His deep affection for his native London and his dream to create designs that wove optimism into every brick and mortar made him both a visionary and a man of gentle persuasion. One crisp autumn morning, as leaves began to turn to a million shades of amber, Edward found himself in conversation with his dear friend Henry Powell, a journalist known as much for his keen intellect as for his indefatigable benevolence. They met in a small, sunlit courtyard behind the facade of St. Martin's Hall, where the delicate carvings of garlands on the old facade of the building were polished daily by time and cared for by a devoted custodian of history. "Edward, your eyes hold the secret of the city itself," Henry remarked as they sat on an ancient stone bench intricately decorated with floral motifs. "Every time you gaze upon these venerable structures, you see not decay but the destiny of renewal." Edward smiled humbly and replied, "Henry, it is not merely stone that sustains us, but our dreams. These edifices remind us of the promise of each new dawn, when light and shadow engage in an eternal dance across our streets." Thus began a journey that would alter the lives of everyone caught in its unfolding web. Edward and Henry's conversation soon attracted the attention of other notable citizens of London, including Alexander Hawthorne, a wealthy patron of the arts whose home lay along a resplendent row of Georgian terraces facing a bustling market square, and Eleanor Whitmore, a spirited young woman known not only for her penetrating intelligence but for her unyielding compassion for the underprivileged dwellers of the sprawling city margins. With hearts imbued with a collective hope, these figures embarked upon an adventure of reconstruction and of bringing beauty to the everyday. The narrative, like the labyrinthine streets of old London, wove multiple lives together. Edward's architectural vision was soon intertwined with the ambitions of Alexander, who had long dreamed of erecting a grand civic centre that would bring together the fragmented neighbourhoods of the city. The impetus for this dream had taken root one autumn when Alexander had walked past the decrepit remains of a once majestic mansion on a forgotten lane in Bloomsbury. There, behind a veil of time and neglect, lay a memory of splendour and a promise of what could be again. Determined to rekindle the flame of that lost era, Alexander had resolved at once to gather those who shared his passion. In the days that followed, Edward joined forces with Alexander, and soon Eleanor openly offered her support. Together, they planned to create a civic masterpiece, a building that not only honored the architectural grandeur of the past but also served as a beacon of possibility for all Londoners. Beneath the looming columns of scale and the meticulous reliefs carved into limestone, they envisioned spaces where art, literature, and debate might mingle freely, and where citizens of all stations could come together in fellowship. The project brought them into close contact with a diverse array of Londoners, merchants haggling in the bustling markets of Covent Garden, scholars poring over ancient manuscripts in candlelit libraries, and even the humble street urchins whose playful chatter echoed under the arches of aged bridges spanning the foggy river. As the planning sessions grew longer and the sketches more intricate, the trio found that the heart of their endeavour lay not in the grandeur of structure alone, but in weaving the lives of people into the fabric of the place itself. One brisk day, while Edward meticulously measured the curvature of the new portico he dreamt of, a young man named James Preston approached him. James, a former apprentice carpenter with a love for geometry and design, had heard of Edward's project from whispered conversations in smoky taverns. His eyes shone with youthful enthusiasm as he said, "Mr. Merrick, I have studied the blueprints of your designs and found inspiration in every line. Would you indulge me in assisting with the restoration of the ancient stonework? I promise that my hands work with devotion, and I yearn to contribute to a project greater than myself." Edward's heart swelled at the sincerity in James's voice. He saw in the young man echoes of his own ambitions and the potential for greatness that lay hidden in every earnest soul. "James," Edward replied gently, "the structure we build is only as strong as the hearts that labor in its creation. Come, let us walk together along these storied streets, and I will show you the beauty hidden within even the roughest blocks of stone." Their conversation was interrupted by the tinkling laughter of Victoria Blackwood, the daughter of a respected solicitor whose wit and candor were as renowned as her philanthropic endeavors. Victoria, who had long admired Edward's architectural genius, joined the growing circle of companions with an exuberance that warmed even the damp London air. "I shall ensure that every brick laid in our civic centre resonates with the spirit of kindness and hope," she declared, her eyes alight. "Let art and justice guide our work, so that the edifice becomes a sanctuary for all who seek refuge in beauty and truth." As the months wore on, the plans for the new civic center began to take tangible form amid debates in smoky parlors and midnight sketches spread across worn wooden tables in back alleys. The group gathered wherever ideas could flourish, sometimes beneath the imposing shadow of St. Paul's Cathedral, other times in modest tea rooms where the clink of porcelain cups underscored the hum of creative fervor. In these meetings, the architectural details were hammered out with painstaking precision: the graceful curve of the portico, the rhythmic alignment of Corinthian columns, and the intricate patterns in the mosaic floors, each designed to evoke a sense of timeless beauty and solidarity. Edward would often muse aloud, "Every arch and balustrade is a tale in stone, a story of a people who, despite strife and sorrow, continue to dream and rebuild. It is our duty to let these edifices speak of love and hope, a dialogue between the past and the future." His words found fertile ground in the hearts of those who listened, not merely architects and patrons, but also the laborers who toiled in the early morning fog, placing each stone with the tender care of a craftsman building a new world. One rainy evening, as the group gathered in a modest lodging near a bustling street market, Eleanor recounted an odd dream, a vision of London bathed in a golden glow, where every building, every fountain, and every bench vibrated with a sense of renewal. "It is not merely an architectural renaissance we pursue, but the rekindling of the human spirit," she said softly, gazing into the flickering candle light. "In my dream, every face bore a smile, every voice a note of hope. Our city, steeped in both sorrow and joy, can rise like the dawn, dispelling the long darkness of despair." Their dialogues, filled with both poetic musing and grounded practicality, evoked the style of ancient sagas, mixing lofty emotions with the grit and warmth of everyday life. Even as the city outside battled the clamor of industrial change, within the circle of friends a shared conviction blossomed, that architecture, at its finest, is the living embodiment of the human spirit, a romance between form and function that can heal and inspire. In designing the civic center, every detail was scrutinized. The main facade was to be a symphony of Georgian symmetry and balustrade elegance, with large arched windows that revealed the gentle interplay of light and shadow. The portico, a sweeping embrace of reality and aspiration, was to be crowned with a pediment intricately carved with allegories of justice and charity, reflecting the democratic ideals that had begun to stir in the hearts of many Londoners. The interior was no less enchanting, a grand hall whose vaulted ceiling soared overhead like the ambitions of the city itself, its walls lined with frescoes that evoked the mythic tales of ancient heroes and wisdom that transcended time. James, now working at Edward's side, marveled each day at how each stone seemed to hum with a gentle memory of the past. Often, while mixing mortar and scaling scaffolds, he would lean over and murmur to Edward, "Do you feel it, sir? The whisper of history in every fragment of brick." It is as if the old souls of London speak to us, urging us to honor them by creating something filled with light and life. Edward would always nod, his eyes reflecting both the poignancy of memory and the exhilaration of creation. Yes, my boy, it is the echo of every dream, every joy and sorrow that has ever animated these streets. And now it is our turn to add our verse to this endless ballad. As the civic center rose from the bedrock of determined labor and visionary planning, so too did the city around it begin to transform. What once were scattered, isolated pockets of hope and despair gradually merged into a mosaic of communities. Old rivalries were softened by the realization that every Londoner, rich or poor, bore the same capacity for compassion and renewal. In a moment reminiscent of the lyrical interludes found in the works of Victor Hugo, the atmosphere in many parts of the city grew serene, as if the magnificent design of the civic center had cast a spell of unity over its residents. One evening, as a gentle rain swept over the city and blurred the outlines of ancient facades, a celebration was held in the unfinished hall of the civic center. Alongside the crackling of the hearth and the murmur of contented voices, Alexander Hawthorne raised a toast. To London, he proclaimed softly but firmly, and to the promise that beauty shall triumph over adversity. Tonight, as we stand on the threshold of a new era, let us remember that every stone, every arch, every humble brick is a testament to the enduring spirit of mankind. In the midst of the celebration, Victoria Blackwood approached a cluster of local workers who had labored tirelessly through the day to complete a section of the building's facade. With genuine warmth, she spoke to them. Your hands have built more than a structure, you have built a monument to hope. Each chisel and hammer stroke sings of the resilience of the human heart. In every carefully set stone, we see the capacity to dream, to love, and to rise again. Her words, simple yet profound, enveloped the laborers in a sense of pride and belonging. It was during moments like these that Eleanor Whitmore, seated by the softly glowing lanterns, penned letters to friends and distant relatives, describing not only the physical rebirth of the city's architecture but also the intangible renaissance taking place among its citizens. Her letters, filled with delicate flourishes of hope and narrative grace, soon found their way into the hands of many who, far from the center of construction, championed the cause of artistic and social reawakening. Her prose mingled the lyrical beauty of Alexander Dumas with the meticulous attention to historical detail of Ken Follett, capturing an era of transformation without sacrificing the authenticity of every spoken word and every silent sigh that echoed through the streets. The days flowed into weeks, and as winter approached, the civic center neared completion. Edward, Henry, Alexander, Eleanor, Victoria, and James had forged not only a building but also a familial bond that transcended the boundaries of social rank and occupation. Their collaborative spirit was as luminous as the golden lights that now adorned the Grand Hall, a beacon in a city that had weathered centuries of struggle and change. Every carved facade, every delicately painted frieze, and every carefully placed column was a testament to the shared human desire to create something lasting, a legacy of possibility in a world all too often shadowed by despair. Late one evening, as snow began to settle gently upon the city's ancient stones and the gaslights flickered like stars against the velvet sky, Edward found himself alone in the nearly finished hall. He walked slowly along the polished floor, his footsteps echoing softly against the backdrop of completed arches and resplendent mosaics. In that quiet solitude, he allowed his thoughts to wander back to the earliest days of his dream, when mere sketches on paper had seemed ambitious beyond measure. Yet here he stood, surrounded by the embodiment of hope and beauty, a living, breathing monument to the possibility of change. It was in this reflective silence that he encountered a figure emerging from one of the many doorways, a gentle presence that startled him out of his reverie. It was a man named Charles Everley, a poet and an observer of life, whose circumspect eyes carried the weight of centuries. Charles spoke in a measured tone, "Edward, look around you. Here, in these arches and silent corridors, lies an enduring promise. Not just in stone, but in every heart that has labored to restore what was lost. Our work is a prayer, whispered into the fabric of the city." Edward nodded, his gaze fixed upon the intricate patterns of the vaulted ceiling. "Indeed, Charles," he replied softly, sometimes I believe these stones converse with us, urging us to remember that even in darkness, the spark of human endeavor can kindle a new dawn. The conversation dwindled into a comfortable silence, punctuated only by the distant murmur of London's nocturnal life and the soft hum of the city's chill. Charles departed with a final, reassuring smile, leaving Edward to his reverie and the promise of the future that lay hidden within the timeless walls. The Civic Center was finally unveiled on a bright spring morning, the day dawning with a rare clarity that bathed every stone and column in gentle radiance. The unveiling event drew citizens from every walk of life. From aristocrats in their finery to humble tradesmen with calloused hands, all gathered to witness this triumph of hope manifested in architecture. As Edward stepped forward onto a modest stage draped with garlands of fresh blooms, his voice rang out with quiet conviction, "Today, we embrace not only the legacy of our past but also the endless possibilities of our future. May this edifice stand as a symbol that beauty, justice, and compassion shall forever guide our steps." A murmur of approval rippled through the assembled crowd, unified by an understanding that beyond the grandeur of marble and stone, a deeper, more enduring truth was being celebrated. The celebration continued into the afternoon as the Civic Center filled with music, animated conversations, and laughter that seemed to echo in every hall and corridor. Families strolled through the mosaic-tiled atrium, children played among the gently flowing fountains, and scholars discussed philosophy amidst the soft glow of twilight streaming in through the grand windows. In every corner of the building, intricate details spoke of an immense love for history and humanity, delicate frescoes, hand-painted ceilings, and columns that soared gracefully towards a future filled with infinite hope. Outside, London itself seemed transformed. The relentless pace of modern life softened for a moment as people paused to admire the historical grandeur and the promise it carried. Edward, standing at the threshold of the new Civic Center, felt tears well in his eyes as he beheld the culmination of his life's work, a tangible manifestation of dreams and shared ideals. He recalled the spirited debates in stormy taverns, the gentle counsel of friends by lamplight, and every earnest handshake that had sealed a promise to build something better. In the weeks and months that followed, the Civic Center became a sanctuary for ideas and creativity. Henry Powell's writings chronicled not only the architectural marvel but the rich tapestry of human passion that breathed life into the building. His articles, published in the city's leading newspapers, painted a vivid portrait of London's rebirth, a story imbued with the fervour of a people who had chosen hope over despair. The centre hosted lively debates, inspiring lectures, and musical evenings that left every visitor with a sense of belonging and renewal. One chilly evening at a gathering in the centre's elegant gallery, Victoria Blackwood found herself in conversation with a modest schoolteacher named Samuel Collins. Over a shared cup of tea by a large window carved with exquisite motifs of ivy and vines, Samuel mused, "It is wondrous how a building can embody the very soul of a community. In these hallowed halls, we are reminded that architecture is more than art, it is the spirit of a people cast in stone." Victoria smiled warmly and replied, "Indeed, Samuel, every detail has been crafted with care, not for the sake of mere beauty, but to remind us of our duty to one another. Every arch and every relief speaks of a love for life and the future we can build together." Their exchange, simple yet profound, resonated with all who overheard it, inspiring a collective commitment to stewardship, art, and civic responsibility. Throughout this period of celebration and in-depth introspection, James Preston continued to prove his worth as both a craftsman and a visionary. His hands, once roughened by the labor of his youth, now moved with the finesse of an artist. Late at night in the workshop beneath the Civic Center, he would carve delicate patterns into the stone balustrades. His careful strokes revealed symbols that whispered of ancient legends, of knights and gentle lords who had once roamed these streets, as if inviting Londoners to remember that every generation carries within it the promise of renewal. Charles Everley, who had long roamed the literary circles of London, began to compose verses inspired by the very walls he had seen take shape. In the quiet solitude of his narrow attic room overlooking Regent Street, he scribbled out lines like, "Within each stone, a heartbeat sounds, a tale of yore and dreams profound, in art, in love, we find our call, to rise, to stand, united, tall. His poems soon circulated among the city's intelligentsia, becoming a source of comfort and inspiration during times of uncertainty. Even in the moments when the chill of winter seemed to settle permanently into the bones of the old city, his words reminded all who read them that hope was an indomitable force. As the seasons changed and London transitioned from the biting cold of winter to the tentative bloom of early summer, the civic centre evolved into a vibrant hub. The building, resplendent in its architectural splendor, began to serve as a meeting ground for reformers, poets, and everyday citizens who yearned for a better future. Edward Merrick, often seen walking amidst the garden surrounding the centre, a meticulously landscaped space with topiary sculptures and winding gravel paths, would pause to exchange warm greetings with those who remembered the struggles of the past and embraced the promise of tomorrow. One particularly radiant afternoon, as the sun dazzled on freshly polished stone facades and the garden's roses released their delicate perfume, Eleanor Whitmore organized a small gathering to discuss the future of the community. With a gentle strength that belied her years, she addressed the group assembled on a mosaic-tiled terrace beneath a cluster of towering elms. "We have built more than a building," she said, her voice carrying both authority and tenderness. "We have built a space where every Londoner, regardless of station, can find beauty, can find solace, and can find a voice in the dialogue of our shared destiny. Let these walls always remind us that history is not a chain that binds us to sorrow, but a foundation upon which we may construct a future resplendent with hope." Her words were met with heartfelt applause, and in that moment, the centre truly came alive as a living metaphor for the shared human spirit. Over time, the lasting impact of the civic centre manifested itself not only in the physical transformation of the cityscape but also in the subtle shifts in the consciousness of its inhabitants. Neighbors who had once seen only rivalry now exchanged friendly greetings on the street, shopkeepers united in festival preparations for local events, and families gathered in the centre's great hall to celebrate milestones, share stories, and forge bonds that transcended class and creed. Every brick, every elegantly carved column, became a silent emissary of solidarity and progress. In the ensuing years, London's story would be remembered not simply as a chronicle of battles fought or treaties signed but as the narrative of a city's rebirth, inspired by those who dared to dream beyond the limitations of their era. Edward Merrick's legacy, intertwined with the hopes of Alexander Hawthorne, Eleanor Whitmore, Victoria Blackwood, Henry Powell, James Preston, and countless others, became a testament to the transformative power of art, compassion, and shared endeavor. The echoes of their work resounded in every carefully maintained garden, in every polished stone facade, and in every warm greeting exchanged on the winding streets. In quiet moments beneath the vaulted ceilings of the Civic Centre, where the interplay of light and shadow created ephemeral mosaics on ancient walls, one could almost hear the whispered voices of those who had labored long ago, a reminder that in every period of darkness, there exists the potential for light. On a serene summer evening, as the twilight deepened into a starlit canopy over a city that had long learned to cherish its own renaissance, Edward Merrick took a solitary stroll along the banks of the Thames. The river, glinting like a ribbon of silver beneath the gentle caress of the moonlight, murmured softly of ages past and the promise of a future yet unwritten. Near one particularly majestic bridge, its arches echoing the artful craftsmanship of centuries, the architect paused and reflected upon the enduring power of hope. In the gentle lapping of the water and the rustle of willow leaves in the night breeze, he heard a refrain that spoke of lives interwoven, of resilience transcending the boundaries of time. In that heartfelt moment, as if the entire city held its breath in anticipation of what was to come, Edward smiled. A smile born not only of satisfaction at a dream realized but also of the quiet certainty that the spirit of kindness and unity would continue to flourish in every corner of London. And as the city of Georgian London bathed in the soft luminescence of a hopeful tomorrow, the edifice of the Civic Centre stood as a vivid reminder that even amidst the shifting sands of history, human compassion and artistic passion were forces too potent ever to be forgotten. Thus, as the narrative of London wound its intricate course through days of struggle and nights of celebration, each citizen became a living chapter in the grand, continuous story of hope and renewal. Their voices, etched into every carved stone and transmitted through the abundant dialogue of the streets, testified to a singular truth, that beauty, when nurtured with love and unity, could defy the ravages of time. And it is in this enduring conviction that the spirit of Georgian London remains immortal, a beacon shining bright, inviting future generations to add their own verses to the eternal ballad of light emerging from even the deepest shadows. In the soft hush of the evening, with the city's lights glimmering like distant stars and the gentle murmur of voices intertwined with the pulse of London's storied past, the tale of Edward Merrick, Henry Powell, Alexander Hawthorne, Eleanor Whitmore, Victoria Blackwood, James Preston, Charles Everley, and so many others became one with the city's soul. Their collaborative journey, rich with dialogue, steeped in architectural splendor, and imbued with the kind and uplifting spirit of true human endeavor, would be recounted for generations. Every stone in the Grand Civic Center, every carefully sculpted detail, was a testament to the power of unity in the face of adversity, and a celebration of the boundless potential that lives within every heart. And so, as twilight yielded to the promise of another day, Georgian London continued its march toward the horizon of a new era, where history and hope embraced in a timeless dance. The city, with its intricately carved facades and ardent spirit, soared like an ode to the eternal beauty of human resilience, a shining reminder that even the smallest light could illuminate the darkest corners of the world. If you enjoyed the story, subscribe to my channel and check out the description to find out how you can support my work.